Good to go. I'm looking forward to this. You have the fortunate or unfortunate opportunity to sit and talk with me. I'm not sure which one that is, but I will sit and we're going to have a chat about transforming nursing education. So I'm really looking forward to this. I've spent a good chunk of my career in healthcare. But one of my first questions, actually, Elena and I were talking about this, was how did you find out about this and how did you get connected? Because Elena was like, it wasn't through LinkedIn or anything like that. So I'm curious there.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're one of the larger hospitals, and we have a sister hospital that's a little bit smaller, and we connected with their education department, and they actually discovered 7TAP. So it was introduced to us through a different hospital.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, and now you get to experience this event, which hopefully you go, that was fun. I want to do that again. All right. So let's go to the first question that I have for you, because where you're using microlearning there, obviously, and in a way you were turned on to it by another hospital system, but where does that fit in? Like, how does that fit into your ecosystem of learning, especially around like nurse education?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, understanding the shifts that nursing works, I think there's a general understanding that it's 24/7. So day shift, night shift. It's not a regular schedule. It rotates. People work weekends. So it's been great for us trying to connect with staff that are constantly working this irregular schedule to connect with people when they are actually on site here and working.
Okay.
So that's been a great part of having 7TAPs here.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. I have lots of nurse friends, and the schedule is you mean you're not sitting behind a desk just waiting to do e-learnings in the LMS on a regular basis? That's not part of your regular routine. So, okay. Now the story behind this, how you ended up getting into this space, was another hospital system who also was doing it, brought it to your attention, correct? So what was that? What did that look like? How were you doing it before? And what did that transition look like?
Yeah, so you actually talked about some e-learns, and that's actually a pain point for a lot of us because trying to connect with staff at different points or different times when they're working, we have an online learning management system, which is it's helpful to get stuff out there, but it's also not always well received. And so um, trying to
That's not
find
limited to your hospital, by the way. Spoiler alert.
it's I feel like, yeah, the shared pain point.
Yeah.
Um, so we were trying to find a different way to connect with people that might be outside of our typical LMS and then outside of our emails. I think email fatigue is huge, and it's our primary source of communication. But also, again, there's email fatigue and people aren't reading them as closely, or, aren't getting the information that we're trying to get to them. So, it's this drive or this desire to find something that was new, easy for our users, and can be utilized when they're here, not necessarily at home. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. So you mentioned you still have kind of the traditional, like we got an LMS set up, your compliance and some of those things. So some of that stuff is still happening through there. Where did you go big on this, like out of the gate, or were there certain areas that kind of started with it and it evolved and it became something bigger, or how did that look for you?
Yeah, so we definitely started with pilot courses, and working with, um, the group from 7TAPS was extremely helpful for designing our first courses and how to get it sent out to staff. So we started by piloting a course, and then that's kind of how we realized numerous benefits from utilizing it. And
Okay.
then from there, it got bigger, and now we utilize it in many different capacities. But
Okay.
starting with like a primary pilot course to see if it was going to work or something that we liked.
Okay.
And then it's just grown.
It's just continued to grow over time. Okay. Got it. Now, were there any, because it's different. I mean, any change, what I've found over the years, and I actually got my start in the industry. I was implementing, you'll love this, EMR, which I know is healthcare practitioners' favorite thing. They love charting, and they especially love charting on technology. But I'm curious, I found even things that may be easier or better still can be met with resistance. Like somebody's like, I don't like this, and they'll just find a reason. Have you experienced any of that where people are like, oh, the TikTok kids or the Instagram, like, did you have any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely, we've have multiple generations that we're working with. So trying to
Okay.
find something that fits the bill for everyone it's not always easy, but I think the majority of our staff were surprised at the ease of use.
Okay.
If we're able to send it out directly to their cell phone, it's just a click and it's
Okay.
there. So yes, there's definitely resistance and comments, and you can never find a one size fits all for delivering
No.
education or
You give
communication.
somebody $100 bill, no complaint. It's not 520s. It's just reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. So experience that. But, on the other side, we've really been surprised at how well it's been received.
Okay. Okay. Well, I would imagine, especially with the environment that you're working in and just the setup and all of that. I mean, it makes sense. Now, in terms of creation, like building this stuff, how does that work in your organization? Because I know it's different, even within hospital systems that I worked with. Like they've got different set. So, is there like a formal learning team in place that's doing a lot of it? Is it something that they do a chunk of it, but there's also informal, like you yourself or other nurses might actually help create things where they go, hey, there's a gap here. Can we just do that? How is that structured?
Good question. And because it's new still, we don't have like a formal structure that
Okay.
necessarily, but we have um, different care areas that have their own accounts. So, and because in healthcare there's so many specialized areas, I specifically work in critical care. If I need to collaborate to create a 7 taps with another specialty area like wound care or um, cardiac surgery or something that I'm not necessarily the content expert in, I
Yeah.
will have a Teams meeting and we'll work together to create a 7 taps. That's the part that I can bring, is how to utilize 7 taps and what our nurses need, and then help develop the content with the content expert.
Okay. Okay. Got it. So you're actually involved in building some of these things.
Most of them, yeah. Me and then
Okay.
my coworker, who typically is right behind me, we do a lot of the 7 taps creations here. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. That's awesome. Well, you said it's not super formal. They eliminated my position 6 weeks ago. So if you need a chief learning officer, hey, just call me up. So no,
Okay.
but I think that's awesome that that you're actually actively involved in that, and even that collaborative nature of the fact that you're pulling in this meetings and working together, and you've got that experience as the nurse, so actually exactly what people need and pulling that in. One of the questions that came through the Q&A that I think is always interesting when it comes to especially hourly employees and things like that is some of the labor limits and personal device stuff. So
Yeah.
when it comes to accessing this stuff, have you had to run into any of that where it's like, well, can we access this on our personal phone? Do we have to do it through a work device? Can we do it outside of work? Are we going to get dinged on all that? I've
Yeah.
navigated it a number of times, but I'm curious where you are in that space.
That's a great question. And we really try and be thoughtful about when we're sending it out directly to personal phone numbers for staff. We've
Okay.
done it, but very infrequently.
Okay.
Typically, we'll use the QR code option and include it in like a weekly update or post it in the unit,
Yeah.
versus trying to stay away from sending it to a personal phone. When we
Okay.
do that, it does help to track how long it takes people to do it. So, if we did run into an instance where we needed to compensate or someone was upset about it or, had issues,
Yeah.
we were able to track and see that and make sure that people get paid for their time. Yeah,
Okay.
we're really trying to be thoughtful about when we reach people at home, because that's work-life balance in healthcare is always a struggle.
Yeah, well, and it's always a tough line to walk because, if you're doing it right, there are certain things that people will by their own, like I just am curious and it's something that I'm just interested in doing. And you get into that gray area of like, well, am I working off the clock? But it's by my own desire versus if corporately you're going, hey, you need to do this training, wink, wink, and you got to get it done. And I know you're like, it gets dicey real quick. Now, are all of these tied back to like a learning management system so that you have a record, or do you use some for just like performance or just even kind of nudge, kind of, hey, here's something that would be helpful? Because you mentioned the QR code that some people might be scanning. That may not necessarily be validating with anything, correct?
Correct. So if we do a QR code in the unit, but we're tracking it for certain metrics, we'll have a card at the end that will say put your name in for credit, so we can still track who's completed it versus tracking through sending it out to someone's personal device.
Okay. Okay. I like that. I like that. Okay.
And then one other thought. So and maybe my friends in the chat will relate to this. You always have some people who are expressing frustrations coming to work, and they don't know a practice change or an update. And then you have people who don't want to be contacted at home. So sending it out gives the option to do it in the moment and have the updates, and or you have the link and you can look at it at any point.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I think that goes back to this performance mindset, which again, there's certain things that it's like, hey, this is a legal, especially in healthcare where there's a lot of compliance, regulations around some of this. There's certain times where it's like, yeah, we can't just kind of like play nice around this. But then there's other times where it's like, hey, this is for your benefit. And I know in a lot of the health organizations I've worked with, the pace of change, especially over these past few years, is nuts. And so being able to put something together quick and just get it out to go, hey, like you might not need to look at it now, but you're going to want to check this out, is extremely helpful, even just from a change management standpoint.
Absolutely.
Okay. So kind of as we're coming into the home stretch here, for folks who may be in a position like you were, this other hospital's like, hey, we're doing this, it's super great for us. And you're like, we don't have like a formal structure in place. We're like, we haven't necessarily. What advice would you give to them in terms of getting started? Because I know there's probably people who are like, this sounds cool, I like the idea, but I'm also going like, I'm starting to think of all the possible things and getting overwhelmed. Where did you start?
We started small, just a pilot course, something that content you feel comfortable with. Trial it on a small group of people, see what they think, and then go from there. I think starting small, even using the free account, building up with what you need to do, and then you'll get hooked. You'll realize it's actually super easy to use. There's constantly updates that are making it better. So I think how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So start small and go from there.
And here's my question to you. Are you like total tech geek? Like, are you super tech savvy where you just go in and you'll figure out any technology? Or was it just easy enough even without that kind of savviness?
I'm somewhere in the middle. I think,
okay.
I feel like bedside nursing, it's not so much tech focused minus the EMR. And so like navigating Outlook was new for me when I took this role as an educator. So, middle ground, I think I have a good base understanding of technology, but I will say that it's been user friendly.
Okay. Got it. And then my last question for you, have there been through this journey any particular challenges that you've encountered where you've gone, man, how are we going to work through this? Or has it been relatively smooth?
The biggest challenge was just the length of time it took for us to get from discovering 7TAPS to then having our own account where we could create content and access it. And so, not a huge barrier, but it's just slow moving in healthcare sometimes.
That's an understatement. There's the crazy part about healthcare though is there's some things that move like
incredibly
lightning fast. And you're like, why is that moving at the speed of light? And then other things that you're like, this should be going so much faster. Yet I'm in a jalopy that is missing 3 tires and I cannot figure out why we can't move it. So I appreciate that.